Do you like the feeling of being in control? Do you like locking down the board while still being in the position of operating with nigh impunity? Well, then I have a deck tech for you. This is the Geist of St. Traft Commander EDH deck tech from Meta Game Mastery. Big time! Go time! Let's go! First up, we got the commander here. He is the Geist of St. Traft. 3 CMC, 1 colorless, white, blue, 2/2 legendary spirit cleric with hexproof. Whenever Geist of St. Traft attacks, put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Exile that token at the end of combat. Wow, that's a lot of value. First and foremost, we have our commander who is super cheap. He's only 3 mana. He has hexproof, so he cannot be targeted with single target removal, excuse me. And he attacks for 6 damage with evasion. So much power on such a small package. He is going to be our primary kill condition in this deck. Now you look at him and you say, okay, now hold on. That's not a ton of damage for commander. Only 6 damage. That's still going to take a lot of time. That's why we're going to be running an absolute control deck. But he's so fragile. All people have to do is block him in combat. Well, that brings us to our next category of cards. Unblockable equals nigh unkillable in this deck. We'll be running cards such as Cloak of Mists, 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a blue, enchantment aura, enchanted creature is unblockable. Well, now he's getting through every single turn and smashing in with his 4/4 flying angel. Or we could turn up a notch with Aqueous Form. 1 blue mana enchantment aura. Enchant creature cannot be blocked, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, you get to scry 1, so you get additional card selection on top of making your Geist of St. Traft immune to almost everything except board wipes. And then we have Dolmen Gate. This affects all of your creatures. 2 colorless mana, artifact to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. That means even if he is blocked, he's not going to die in combat. And then we have Spirit Mantle. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a white enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and protection from creatures. Now, what does that mean? That means he can't be affected by, he can't take damage from creature abilities. He can't be blocked at all. And if he does block something, he takes 0 damage, no matter how powerful the creature. Next up, we have Unquestioned Authority. 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a white enchantment aura. When Unquestioned Authority enters the battlefield, draw a card. Enchanted creature has protection from creatures. So not only is it going to give us unblockable, but it replaces itself. So much value. Next up, we have Rune Tail, Kitsune Ascendants. 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a white. For a 2/2 legendary Fox Monk. If you have 30 or more life, flip Runetail Kitsune Ascendants. And then it becomes Runetail's Essence. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. So this is an enchantment version of Dolmen Gate that requires you have 30 life, but if you're playing this on turn 3, even turn 4, odds are you're still going to have your 30 life in Commander. Very reliable, very resilient, great card for this deck. Next up, we have Frontline Medic. 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a white for a 3/3 human cleric. Passes the vanilla test right there. Battalion. Whenever Frontline Medic and at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures you control are indestructible this turn. You can also sacrifice Frontline Medic, counter target spell with X in its mana cost unless its controller pays 3. We're going to be zeroing in on that Battalion. If he attacks, Geist of St. Traft attacks, and you have the attacking angel, that's a Battalion every single time, giving them all indestructible so that they cannot die in combat. Next up, we have Steel. Steel of the Godhead. It's a 3 CMC 2 colorless, and a Azorius mana symbol. That's a white or a blue. Enchantment aura, as long as enchanted creature is white, it gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. As long as enchanted creature is blue, it gets +1/+1 and unblockable. So getting +2/+2, lifelink, and unblockable on our already supreme value commander, and it's the same CMC. So if we can play our commander, we can play this enchantment aura. That's a very good card. Next up, we have Bastion Protector. 3 CMC, 2 colorless and white for a 3/3 human soldier. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have indestructible. Powerful card. And lastly, we have Thassa, God of the Sea, who is just so perfect for this deck. 3 CMC, 2 colorless and a blue for a 5/5 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible as long as your devotion to blue is less than 5. Thassa isn't a creature. And I'll be honest, in this deck, most of the time you won't have that devotion of 5. But that's okay because we're playing her for her other abilities. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get to scry an additional 1, which is going to turn up your card selection. Just ratchet it up. And then on top of that, you can always pay 1 colorless and a blue. Target creature you control can't be blocked this turn, including your commander. Next up, we have just some straight value cards for the deck. Sundial of the Infinite is 2 colorless mana for an artifact. You can pay 1 colorless mana, tap it, end the turn. Activate this ability only during your turn. What you could do is, once damage is applied at the end of combat step, activate Sundial of the Infinite, and your Angel token is not removed from game, allowing you to generate a permanent 4/4 flying Angel token every single turn. If you win with this, you win with style. Next up, we have Serra Ascendant, one of the best value cards in the entire format. 1 white mana for a 1/1 human monk with lifelink. As long as you have 30 or more life, Serra Ascendant gets +5/+5 and has flying. What? That's 1 mana for a 6/6 flying lifelink creature. If you play it on the first turn in a game, this could just win the game on its own. So much value. In this format, it's unreal. And lastly, we have Sun Titan. 6 CMC, 4 colorless, white, 6/6 giant with vigilance. Whenever Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. You will notice that as we go through this deck list, it has a very low mana curve. And so the vast majority of cards in this deck can be put back into play, can be recursioned with Sun Titan. Next up is Disruption. We got a lot of hate bears in this deck to help control the board. For example, the classic, the OG, Meddling Mage. You'll see this thing tearing it up in Modern right now. It's only 2 CMC, a colorless and a blue for a 2/2 human wizard. As Meddling Mage comes into play, name a non-land card. The named card cannot be played at all. The trick with this in Commander is simple. Name an opponent's commander. If you see a deck that's Voltron, that's got a commander that's a build around, drop this, lock out the opponent's commander, put the onus on them that they cannot continue playing their game until they get rid of this Meddling Mage. Same thing goes for Nevermore. 3 CMC, a colorless green enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, name a non-land card. That name card can't be cast. Next up, we have Armageddon. 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a white sorcery. Destroy all lands. Ouch. It's not uncommon for you to play Geist of St. Traft and Armageddon the very next turn, locking out your opponents so that they don't have the ability to continue their game plan while you have your kill condition on the board. Another great disruption spell in this deck is Tanglewire. 3 CMC, artifact with Fading 4. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player taps an untapped artifact, creature, or land he or she controls for each fade counter on Tangle Wire. The trick with Tangle Wire is A, you get to remove your fade counters before it affects you, and B, you always get to tap Tangle Wire. So over the course of the 4 turn cycles where Tangle Wire is disrupting the board, you tap down a total of 3 other permanents, whereas your opponents will tap down a total of 10 permanents over that time. That's hugely disruptive, especially when you could drop this early game. All the while, you get to attack with your Geist of St. Traft with impunity. And then, of course, we've got Graph Digger's Cage. It's only 1 CMC artifact. Creature cards can't enter the battlefield from graveyards or libraries. Players can't cast cards in graveyards or libraries, shutting down nearly half the decks in the entire format for only 1 mana. Along those same lines, we have Rest in Peace. 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a white enchantment. When Rest in Peace enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards. If a card or token would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Sorry, reanimation decks. You can't do anything for now. Good luck finding enchantment removal. Stony Silence. 1 colorless and a white enchantment. Activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. Oh, you were going to race ahead of me with all your mana rocks? Well, I already have my kill condition on the board, so I don't care. Grand Abolisher. 2 CMC, 2 white mana. For a 2/2 human cleric, during your turn, your opponents can't cast spells, activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. Oh, you had a combat trick? Not this time. Leonin Arbiter. 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a white for a 2/2 cat cleric. Players can't search libraries. Any player may pay 2 colorless mana for that player to ignore this effect until end of turn. Make those tutors slow the game down. Make them pay. Aven Mind Center. 3 CMC, 2 colorless and a white for a 2/1 bird wizard with flash. So important that you realize this has flash. Flying. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. Great to play in response to a tutor, and it also gives you the ability to potentially flash this in and kill a creature. The great thing about this is when your opponent pops a fetch land, and then you turn around and make it so that they get nothing in exchange. Fantastic card in this deck. Alm's Protector is 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a white for a 3/4 cat cleric with flash. If an opponent would draw 2 or more cards, instead you and that opponent each draw a card. Oh! Play this in response to a wheel effect and laugh, laugh, laugh. Torpor Orb is 2 CMC for an artifact. Creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger, shutting down so many decks in Commander. The one thing you have to keep in mind is this is a format where every deck plays creatures, and many people look to get that immediate value in creatures by using and abusing enter the battlefield effects. Taking them away can completely destroy somebody's strategy. In fact, because we're in white, we can get the additional redundancy of running Hushwing Griff. That's 3 CMC, 2 colorless and a white for a 2/1 Hippogriff with flash and flying. Once again, creatures enter the battlefield, doesn't cause abilities to trigger. Shut them down. And of course, we have Linvala, Keeper of Silence. 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white for a 3/4 legendary angel with flying. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated. Completely one-sided disruption. So much value. You gotta love this girl. Next up, we will tax their attacks. If we're attacking every turn, odds are we'll have very few blockers, but we don't need them because we are going to deplete their mana if they come after us with classic cards like Propaganda, 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a blue enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 colorless mana for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. And along those same lines, we have a version of it in white called Ghostly Prison. Also 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a white this time enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 colorless mana for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. And Windborn Muse, a little bit more fragile. She's 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a white for a 2/3 spirit with flying. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 colorless mana for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. The thing is, this is cumulative. The more of these you play, the more improbable and practical it becomes for your opponents to target you with their attacks. And of course, because she's a evasive creature with power, she can get extra damage in. Next up, we have Archangel of Tithes, 4 CMC, 1 colorless, white, 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 3/5 angel with flying. As long as Archangel of Tithes is untapped, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 colorless mana for each of those creatures. As long as Archangel of Tithes is attacking, creatures can't block unless their controller pays 1 colorless mana for each of those creatures. So she does it all for us. Not only can she act as a pillow fort card, which is her primary function in the deck, but if we see an opponent that's tapped out, we can attack with Geist of St. Traft and Archangel of Tithes, and they can't block anything. So good! Sphere of Safety is 5 CMC, 4 colorless, and a white enchantment. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. There are approximately 15 enchantments in this deck, maybe a little bit more, I'd have to double check. Paying 15 mana for each creature becomes very impractical very quickly. And lastly, we have Nord's Annex, which is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, and 2 white Phyrexian mana symbols for an artifact. Now, mind you, white Phyrexian mana symbols can be paid for with either a white mana or you could pay 2 life. So you can cast this for as little as 3 colorless mana and 4 life. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays a white colorless or a white Phyrexian mana for each of those creatures. Either draining your opponent's life total if they're non-white, taxing their mana, or protecting you. Either way, you're coming out ahead. Next up, card advantage. Every true control deck has to be able to draw answers, and this deck draws all day long. First and foremost, we have Curiosity. 1 blue mana, enchant aura. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Just slap this on the Geist. If we're making him unblockable anyways, we may as well draw an extra card every time he swings. Same thing goes with the brand new from Rivals of Ixalan, Curious Obsession. 1 blue mana for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with a creature this turn, sacrifice Curious Obsession. So worst case scenario is, for whatever reason, we're not attacking in with our unblockable Geist, then that's okay. All we do is lose this enchantment aura. Odds are we're going to get more than our mana's worth out of this card. So much value. And of course, we have classic cards like Preordain. 1 blue mana, sorcery, scry 2, then draw a card. We also have Ponder. 1 blue mana, sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You may shuffle your library, draw a card. We also have Open the Armory. So much of our deck is about getting an enchantment or an equipment on Geist of St. Traft. This is going to tutor for all our key pieces. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a white. Search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, and put it directly into your hand, then shuffle your library. Factor Fiction, 3 colorless and a blue, instant, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates these cards into 2 piles, put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard, more often than not getting you either 2 or 3 cards out of the top 5, and you could do that at instant speed. If for whatever reason you were holding up mana for a counter and you decided not to use it, you can still play this at the end of your opponent's turn. That gives you power and flexibility, and most importantly for this deck, control. Oh, next up we have Bident of Thassa. It's 4 CMC, 2 colorless, blue, legendary enchantment artifact. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, pay 1 colorless and a blue, tap it. Creatures your opponents control attack this turn if able. We're not going to use that second ability all that often, but being able to draw a card every single time one of our evasive creatures hits an opponent is raw power. Next up we have Afara, God of the Polis. She is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white-blue for a 6/5 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible as long as your devotion to white and blue is less than 7. And Farah isn't a creature. At the beginning of each upkeep, if you had another creature enter the battlefield under your control last turn, draw a card. This card's freaking sweet. Now, most of the time, we're not going to have enough devotion to make her a creature. That's okay. That makes her even harder to kill. And on top of that, every time we attack with Geist of St. Traft, we'll have an angel enter the battlefield every single turn. So that allows us to draw a card on each of our next opponent's upkeep over and over and over again. Super reliable card draw. Next up, we have our ramp package, which has to be super aggressive to force Geist of St. Traft out early. Naturally, the first card we'll look at is Sol Ring. 1 colorless mana artifact, tap, add 2 mana to your mana pool. The most efficient mana ramp spell in the entire format. The instant staple. And as the professor would say, because Sol Ring. Next up, we have a rather obscure artifact. It's called Jeweled Amulet. It costs 0 mana to actually play it. You can pay 1 mana, tap, put a charge counter on Jeweled Amulet. Note the type of mana spent to pay for this activation cost. Play this ability only if there are no charge counters on Jeweled Amulet. You can tap it, remove a charge counter from Jeweled Amulet, add 1 mana of Jeweled Amulet's last noted type to your mana pool. So this is super weird, but let's say, for example, I play this, I pay a blue mana, and it becomes a mana battery. That means I can tap it later on to remove that counter and get an additional blue mana on maybe my next turn. I could do this on turn 1, turn 2, play a plains, tap this for a blue, tap my first blue mana source for a blue, and then pay a white to get Geist of St. Traft out on turn 2. Next up, we have Lotus Petal, 0 CMC artifact. Tap it, sack Lotus Petal, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Just super fast, extra mana to race our Geist of St. Traft onto the board. Mindstone, 2 CMC artifact. Tap, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. Enters the battlefield untapped, so you can crank out another 1-drop with this. And you have the additional versatility to pay 1 colorless mana, tap it, sack it, and draw a card. Next up, we have Felwar Stone. It's 2 CMC artifact. Tap, add a mana to your mana pool of any color that a land or opponent controls could produce. Usually, you'll see a lot of blue players at your commander table. Either way, though, you're still getting mana ramp, even if it is effectively colorless for you, so that you can crank out Geist of St. Traft at least your next turn. Sapphire Medallion is a little bit complicated for this deck, but it works beautifully, and I'll explain why. It's 2 CMC for an artifact. Blue spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast, giving us a discount on our commander, but at the same time, it gives us a discount on all of our other control spells that are blue. And one of the key things with control is you want to be able to cast your control spell and still have mana to stay on tempo every single turn. This allows you to get the versatility of playing several low casting cost spells every single turn cycle. Same thing goes for Pearl Medallion, which is 2 colorless mana. Artifact white spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. And of course, there's Azorius Signet. 2 colorless mana. Artifact, pay 1 colorless, tap it, add a white and a blue to your mana pool, just giving you color fixing, mana ramp. And probably the most powerful ramp spell in the entire deck is the Sword of Feast and Famine, because it's a value card. It's 3 colorless mana equipment, 2 equip costs. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, gains protection from black and from green. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, giving you additional disruption, and you untap all lands you control. Slap this on your already unblockable Geist of St. Traft so that you can play your spells during your first main phase and then leave your mana up to control the game during the next turn cycle. Or if you're low on control, just continue playing more spells on your second main phase. Either way, you profit. And we're going to have a huge removal package. Naturally, this is Azorius Control. We start with Path to Exile. 1 white mana, instant, exile target creature. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. And we have the OG, the original, most powerful removal spell. 1 white mana. Source of Plowshares is only 1 white mana. Instant, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. We also use Darksteel Mutation. It's 1 colorless and a white. Enchant Aura. Enchanted creature is a 0/1 insect artifact creature with indestructible and loses all other abilities. This card is so good because it locks down a commander. It's a way for you to effectively remove him from the board, but he cannot go back to the command zone. And in doing so, you make it so that while he can technically block the Geist of St. Traft, he won't kill the Geist. He won't die in combat. You can't use him as a chunk blocker, and he can't be recast. This locks out other people's commanders. It's so versatile. It's so powerful. It's so good. We also have Journey to Nowhere, which is 1 colorless and a white enchantment. When Journey to Nowhere enters the battlefield, exile target creature. When Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled creature card to the battlefield under its owner's control. And Stasis Snare, 1 colorless, white enchantment with flash. So you can play this as an instant. When Stasis Snare enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Stasis Snare leaves the battlefield, allowing you to cast this in response to other effects. Wait to see what your opponent does first. That's super powerful and super important for every removal spell. And of course, we have Detention Sphere, which is very similar but works in a totally different capacity in this deck. It's 1 colorless, white-blue enchantment. When Detention Sphere enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-land permanent, not named Detention Sphere, and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent. When Detention Sphere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So you can just target any random creature in a pinch, but ideally, you want to take out an entire token army. Ideally, you want to take out everybody else played a first turn Soul Ring, you snatch them all away. Ideally, you want to get 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s, army of tokens for 1. That's a powerful effect, and it's exile. Board wipes. We're going to have a huge board wipe suite in this deck, including the OG, the classic, Wrath of God, 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white sorcery, destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. And of course, the modern counterpart, Day of Judgment, 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white sorcery, just destroy all creatures. They can be regenerated, but I'm fine with the additional redundancy in a singleton format. And of course, Supreme Verdict. The strict upgrade is one colorless, white, white, blue, sorcery. Supreme Verdict cannot be countered. Destroy all creatures. And we have Rout. It's 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white, white, sorcery. You may cast Rout as though it had flash. If you pay 2 more mana to cast it, destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. So it's a slightly overpriced Wrath of God, or for 7 CMC, you can make this thing an instant speed Wrath of God. Play this at the end of an opponent's turn, or you could play it in response to their combo going off. This is super versatile. I love this card. Play this in more white decks. And we have Akroma's Vengeance. 6 CMC, 4 colorless, white, white, sorcery. Destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. That's a lot of permanents that you're just nuking off the board. And in the event that you're in control, you have the advantage, you don't need this, you can always just cycle it away for 3 colorless mana. And probably the most powerful straight up board wipe in the game is Terminus. 6 CMC, 4 colorless, white, white, sorcery. Put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries. What's an indestructible? What's a hexproof? I don't care. And you could cast this card for its miracle cost of 1 white mana when you draw it. If it's the first card you drew this turn, with all your card draw spells, it's very possible you will draw this on an opponent's turn. That's okay. You can still cast it for its miracle cost, and there are very few things in life more frustrating than getting hit with the Terminus on your turn. That's just brutal. And we have a small counter suite, just because what control deck would be complete without counter spells? First up, we have the workhorse of the format, Swan Song. 1 blue mana instant, counter target enchantment, instant, or sorcery spell. Its controller creates a 2/2 blue bird creature token with flying. Does so much work. It's an absolute hard counter for 3 of the most prevalent card types in the format. Fantastic. Next up, you get Counterspell. 2 colorless mana, instant, counter target spell. There's no downside. It's just that good. And of course, we have Disdainful Stroke. It's 1 colorless mana and a blue, instant, counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. This does work in Commander. This finds more use in Commander than any other format. It's that good. And of course, we have Render Silence. It's 3 CMC, 1 white, blue, blue. Instant, counter target spell. Its controller can't cast spells this turn. Ouch! And we have Rewind. 4 CMC, 2 colorless, blue, blue. Instant, counter target spell. And then you get to untap up to 4 lands, allowing you to still play other counters, other instants during that turn cycle. Super powerful. Now, I'm sure you've noticed we're running a lot of spells in this deck. We're actually only running 32 lands total, but the utility lands go a long way in this deck. We've got Seraph Sanctuary. It's a land card. When it enters the battlefield, you gain a life. Whenever an angel enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life, and it taps for a colorless mana, allowing you, every time you attack with Geist of St. Traft, to also get an additional life gain every single turn. We also use Windbrisk Heights because its hideaway ability, this land enters the battlefield. When it does, look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. It taps for 1 white mana, but you can also pay 1 white mana, tap it. You may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if you attack with 3 or more creatures this turn. Our commander provides 2 of those on his own. super synergistic in this deck. Great value card. Rogue's Passage is just more unblockability in the deck. It's a land that taps for a colorless mana, or you can pay 4 colorless mana and tap it. Target creature can't be blocked this turn, can't be countered. So important, and it plays right into the theme of the deck. We have Sejiri's Step, land. When it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gains protection from a color of your choice until end of turn. It also taps for 1 white mana. So you can play this when you have your Geist out, name a color of an opponent's blockers, and swing in with your Geist of St. Traft. He's effectively unblockable that turn. And of course, who needs blocking when you've got Maze of Ith? It's a land, tap it, untap target attacking creature, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by that creature this turn. And when it comes to the rest of the mana base, that's super flexible based on your budget. But because the curve of this deck is so low, there's no reason for you to run more than 32 lands in it. You will be just fine. That was our deck tech for Geist of St. Traft in Commander EDH. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Peace!